David John Burney and Catherine Margaret Burney were an Australian couple from Perth, Western Australia, who murdered 4 women in their home in the year 1986 and attempted to kill a 5th. These crimes have been referred to in the press as the Moorhouse Murders. Hello, this is Defunct City. Subscribe to our channel and don't forget to click on the bell so you don't miss new episodes and stay informed. David John Burney was the eldest of 5 children. He grew up in the semi-rural suburb of Wattle Grove, Western Australia. School friends and parishioners from the Wattle Grove Baptist Church of that period remember that the family was dysfunctional. There were rumors of promiscuity and alcoholism in the family and that they were involved in incest. When Burney's parents asked the local priest to perform their wedding ceremony, he expressed concern about them as individuals and as a potential couple in general, stating that in his opinion their union would never lead to anything good. This was an unusual and seemingly inappropriate couple. David's father was a man of very modest and unattractive appearance, while his mother was known for her rudeness, use of profanity, and bad behavior, often paying sexual favors to cab drivers for fares. David Burney also noted that the family home was unkept and dirty, and that the family never ate together. His parents did not cook meals for their children. In the early 1960s, Burney's parents decided to move with the family to the suburbs of Perth, where David met Catherine Harrison through mutual friends. At 15, David dropped out of school to become an apprentice to jockey Eric Parnham. At the nearby Scotty racetrack during his time there, he physically harmed the horses and developed a habit of exhibitionism. One night, David broke into the room of the elderly woman where he was staying. He was naked, wearing stockings over his head, and attempted his first rape. By the time he was a teenager, he had been convicted of several crimes. He married his first wife when he was just over 20, and the couple had a daughter, Tanya. Tanya was 10 years old at the time of his arrest. She had never been married and had no children, saying, "I don't want to spawn another David Burney." Her real last name is unknown to the media. At the end of the year 1986, David Burney was working at a local machine shop. For more than a year, David and Catherine practiced how to live out their sexual fantasies of rape and murder. They began this a few weeks before committing their first crime. Catherine Margaret Burney was born on the 23rd of May 1951. She was 2 years old when her mother, Doreen, died giving birth to a brother, who coincidentally died 2 days after birth. Unable to raise his daughter, her father Harold sent Catherine to live with her maternal grandparents. When she was 10 years old, a custody dispute resulted in Harold regaining sole custody of Catherine. At 12, she met David Byrne, and by the time she was 14, she was in a relationship with him. Harold had begged Catherine several times to stop associating with David because he was often in trouble with the local police. But his disapproval of their relationship only strengthened their alliance. Time spent in jail as a teenager pushed Catherine to break up with David. Inspired by her parole, Catherine began working for the McLaughlin family as a housekeeper. She later married a man. They had 7 children. Their firstborn, a son in infancy, was hit by a car, and in the year 1985, she left her husband of 6 children and went to live with David. The couple were never legally married, but Catherine changed her last name to Burney. Within 5 weeks, the Burneys had kidnapped 5 women between the ages of 15 and 31. All but one of the victims were raped and murdered. The only exception was their latest martyr, who escaped the day after the kidnapping and led the police to the Burney house, putting an end to their brutal crimes. 22-year-old Mary Nielsen was studying psychology at the University of Western Australia and working part-time at a delicatessen, when she met David Byrne at the auto parts warehouse where he worked. David offered to sell her cheap tires for her car and subsequently gave her his phone number. On October 6, 1986, she went to the Byrne house. She was confined to a bed and raped by David while Catherine watched. She was taken to Gleneagle National Park near Albany Highway in Bedfordale, where she was raped again and strangled with a nylon cord. He then stabbed her, thinking it would speed up decomposition, because he had read it somewhere in a book, as he himself told the interrogation. And they buried her in a shallow grave. 2 weeks after Mary Nielsen's murder, they kidnapped 15-year-old Susannah Candy. As she was hitchhiking down the Stirling Highway in Claremont, Australia. She was an outstanding student at Hollywood High School and lived at home with her parents and siblings in Nedland, Australia. Her father is one of the top ophthalmic surgeons in Western Australia. After her parents contacted the police that their daughter was missing, Bernie had her send letters to her family to assure them that she was all right. But the family was still very worried about her. The Burns had been traveling for hours looking for a victim when they spotted Candy. When she got into the car, she was held at the point of a knife and her hands were tied. The girl was taken to a house where she was gagged, chained to a bed, and raped. After the man finished raping the girl, Catherine Burney lay down beside her and tried to strangle the girl with a nylon cord. But the torturer became hysterical. The man pushed Candy a sleeping pill to calm her down. And when the girl fell asleep, David put the cord around her neck and told Catherine to prove her undying love for him by killing the captive. The woman complied and killed Candy while David watched. When questioned, she was asked why she did it. Catherine answered, because I wanted to see how strong I was inside myself. I didn't feel anything. It was as I expected it to be. I was willing to follow him to the end and do whatever it took to get his desires met. She was a woman. Women hurt and destroy men, Catherine said. They buried Candy near Mary Nielsen's grave in the state forest. On November 1st, they saw 31-year-old Nolene Patterson standing outside her car on the Canning Highway. She had run out of fuel as she was returning home from her job as bar manager at the Nedlands Golf Club. Once in the car, she was held a knife to her throat, tied up and prohibited from moving. She was taken to Morehouse Street, where David repeatedly raped her after gagging her and chaining her to a bed. Each victim had to endure virtually the same thing. Originally, the couple decided to kill her that night. But later David decided to keep her captive in the house for 3 days. And over time, he showed signs that he had developed an emotional attachment to Nolene. Catherine quickly became jealous and issued an ultimatum. David must kill the woman or Catherine would kill herself. Whereupon the man immediately poured a massive amount of sleeping pills down Patterson's throat and strangled her while she slept. Her body was taken to the woods, but buried away from the others. Catherine reportedly took great pleasure in throwing earth in the then-dead girl's face. On November 5th, the pair kidnapped 21-year-old Denise Brown as she waited for a bus on the Stirling Highway. Byrne offered the girl a ride, and she agreed. But as soon as she got into the car, Catherine immediately presented a knife to her throat. The crimes were no different, so the captive was taken to their home, chained to a bed, raped, and murdered. The next day, the corpse was taken to a pine plantation. In the privacy of the woods, David Burney raped the dead body in the car while the couple waited for darkness. After they got Denise out of the car, the man raped her again and stabbed her in the neck to make sure the girl was dead. They dug a shallow grave and put her body there. The hole was small, so the girl's head was sticking out of the ground, causing David to grab an axe to cut it off. 17-year-old Kate Moyer was kidnapped in exactly the same way as the previous victims. The girl later asked the couple if they were going to kill or rape her, to which they replied that they would not kill her if she behaved well. She was forced to dance for them and slept in the couple's bed, handcuffed to David. Moyer was their last abductee and the only surviving victim. After surviving a day with the couple, David put a knife to her throat and forced her to call her mother. Moyer assured her mother that she had too much to drink and stayed at her friend's house, hoping that her mother would understand and call her friend, knowing that her daughter did not drink. but the girl managed to escape on her own the day after her mother called. After David went to work, a man came to Catherine's house to give her illegal substances. Catherine forgot to chain the prisoner to the bed, during which she managed to escape through a closed window by breaking the lock. After she jumped out of the window, the girl was attacked by the Byrne family dog. But the girl managed to fight it off and escape. On November 10, 1986, she ran into the store and told the employee that they wanted to kill her. When the police arrived, she said that she had been kidnapped, raped, and wanted to be killed. The police were initially skeptical of her story, but 22-year-old Laura Hancock believed her from the start. Because of the amount of details she was able to provide, including their address and phone number, the Byrnes called themselves aliases, but Moore read David's name on a bottle of medicine. The girl stated that they had watched the Rocky movie on videotape and described a drawing she had made in the house while she was held there. Police subsequently found her drawing in the house, as well as a copy of Rocky on the VCR. David and Catherine were arrested, and during questioning gave conflicting information. Catherine denied ever seeing the kidnapped girl, while David insisted that Moore had come to their house voluntarily to have consensual sex. Detective Sergeant Vince Kadich used a hot blowtorch to convince David to confess to this and past crimes, and to reveal where they buried the bodies of all the victims. David told them where the 4 graves were, but detectives were sure there were other possible victims on the couple's account. Police had speculation that the Byrnes were involved in Cheryl Renwick's disappearance. In May of the year 1986, and Barbara Western in June of that year. There was also speculation that David kidnapped Lisa Marie Mott in the year 1986. However, his first wife reported that he was with her the day the girl disappeared. When David Byrne was sent to court, he pleaded guilty to 4 counts of murder and 1 count of kidnapping and rape. When asked why he pleaded guilty, he pointed to the victims' families and said it was the least I could do. He was sentenced to 4 terms of life in prison. After Catherine Byrne was found sane enough to stand trial, the Supreme Court of Western Australia sentenced her to 4 terms of life in prison. Under the law at the time, both had to serve 20 years each before they were eligible for parole. David was initially held in Fremantle Maximum Security Prison, but was soon transferred to solitary confinement because he was being beaten and raped very badly by the criminals he was incarcerated with. He was transferred to death row, where he remained until the prison closed in the year 1990. While incarcerated, the Byrnes sent more than 2,600 letters to each other, as they were not allowed any other form of contact. David Byrne was found dead in his cell at Casuarina Prison on October 7, 2005, at 4:30 in the morning. He was 54 years old at the time of his death. The police stated that he had hanged himself. Upon investigation, the following factors were named as the reason why the man killed himself. The fact that he was not on antidepressants exacerbated his depression, and that he had been raped by other inmates in a shared cell for a long time. A former prison officer described him as a model prisoner. Catherine was not allowed to attend his funeral. She is incarcerated at Bandiop Women's Prison. Since her incarceration, she has worked as a prison librarian and starred in the prison film Nonsense. In 2007, her application for parole was denied. Her case was to be reconsidered in January of 2010. However, on March 14, 2009, the new Attorney General of Western Australia, Christian Porter, at the request of the victims' families, ruled that she remain in prison for life. This decision makes her the 3rd Australian woman, after Catherine Knight and Patricia Byers, never to be released from prison. Her 4th application for parole was rejected in 2016. The sole survivor stated that David never applied for parole. In 2017, Catherine's youngest son, Peter, urged the court to execute her. He stated that because she was his mother, he was regularly attacked. Catherine is currently serving a life sentence in Bandia Prison, which is located in Western Australia, a suburb of Perth's West Soon.